The year was 2387. Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars. His ship was called the UES Peacekeeper, and it was the most important ship in the human fleet right now. Not because it had the biggest guns, or the strongest armor, but because it carried something more valuable than any weapon. It carried hope. Jake had been a soldier for 20 years. He had fought in the border wars and the mining conflicts. He had seen what humans could do to each other when they were angry, but today was different. Today humanity was trying something new. They were trying to make peace with aliens. Dr. Lisa Martinez sat in her cabin, reading through her notes for the 100th time. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, and she had been chosen to speak for all of humanity. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than any armor she had ever worn. In her bag were gifts from Earth, scientific data that could help both species, and proposals for working together instead of fighting. Lisa had studied the Zephyrians for 3 years. They were tall, thin beings with skin that seemed to change color in different light. Their technology was far ahead of human science. Their ships could travel faster than human vessels. Their weapons could cut through human armor like paper. But they had sent messages saying they wanted peace. The commander, Ryan Baker, walked through the ship, checking on his security team. Ryan was a careful man who had survived many battles by expecting the worst. Something about this mission worried him. The Zephyrian messages had been too perfect, too polite. In his experience, when an enemy was being very nice, it usually meant trouble was coming. His team was small, only 12 soldiers. The diplomats had insisted on keeping the military presence low. They said too many guns would send the wrong message. Ryan understood their thinking, but he still wished he had more people with him. If something went wrong, 12 soldiers would not be enough to protect the ship. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in her office back on Earth, watching the mission through the ship's cameras. She had been in the military for 30 years and had never seen anything like this. For the first time in human history, they were meeting with aliens as equals, not as enemies trying to destroy each other. The human colonies had been fighting alien races for decades. Most of the time, the aliens attacked first, trying to take human worlds or destroy human ships. Humans had learned to shoot first and ask questions later. But the Zephyrians were different. They'd sent peaceful messages. They had followed all the diplomatic rules. They seemed to want the same thing humans wanted: a chance to live without constant war. Jake received a message from Earth Command. Peacekeeper, you are approaching the meeting point. Maintain peaceful posture. Do not power weapons unless directly threatened. This is humanity's chance to prove we can be more than warriors. The captain looked at his crew. They were all volunteers who believed in this mission. They had left behind families and friends to be part of something that could change the future of humanity. If this worked, human children might grow up in a galaxy where they could explore and learn instead of fighting and dying. The ship's sensors picked up movement ahead. Ryan was called to the bridge immediately. Captain, we have contact. 12 ships emerging from the nebula. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The Zephyrian fleet was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Their ships looked like they were made of liquid metal, flowing and changing shape as they moved. Each ship was twice the size of the Peacekeeper, and their hulls glowed with an inner light that human science could not explain. Lisa joined them. On the bridge, her diplomatic bag clutched tightly in her hands. They're really here, she whispered. After all these years of war, they're actually here to talk. The lead Zephyrian ship sent a message. The translation system converted their alien language into words humans could understand. Human vessel. We welcome you to this historic meeting. We are honored to speak with representatives of your species. Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. Send our response, Lisa. Tell them we're honored to. Lisa activated the communication system. This is Dr. Lisa Martinez, speaking for the United Earth government. Thank you for this opportunity to meet in peace. We hope this is the beginning of a friendship that will benefit both our peoples. The response came quickly. We share your hopes, Dr. Martinez. Please follow our lead ship to the meeting station. We have prepared a place where our species can talk safely. Ryan watched the alien ships closely. They moved with perfect coordination, like a school of fish swimming through space. Their formation was beautiful, but it was also the formation of a military fleet. These aliens knew how to fight, even if they claimed to want peace. The meeting station appeared on their screens. It was an ancient structure called Harmony Point, built by a race that had died out long ago. The station was neutral ground, belonging to no one. It was the perfect place for enemies to meet and try to become friends. Lisa checked her equipment one more time. She had translators, recording devices, and communication gear that would let Earth hear everything that happened. She also had a small emergency beacon, though she hoped she would never need to use it. Dr. Martinez, Jake said, I want you to know that everyone on Earth is proud of you. Whatever happens today, you're making history. Lisa nodded, but she was thinking about the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. If she failed, if she said the wrong thing or made the wrong choice, it could mean war between humans and an alien race that was stronger than humanity. Millions of people could die because of her mistakes. The Peacekeeper docked with Harmony Point. Ryan chose 2 of his best soldiers to go with Lisa. The Zephyrians had agreed to limit their delegation to 3 beings as well. It was a sign of trust, keeping the numbers small. As they prepared to leave the ship, Ryan pulled Lisa aside. Doctor, if anything feels wrong, if you get scared for any reason, you signal me immediately. Don't try to be brave. Just get out of there. Lisa smiled at the tough soldier's concern. I'll be careful, Ryan, but I really think this is going to work. The Zephyrian seemed genuinely interested in peace. Admiral Sullivan's voice came through the ship's speakers. Peacekeeper, all of Earth is watching. Dr. Martinez, you carry the hopes of billions of people with you. Show them that humanity can be more than warriors. Show them we can be peacemakers too. Lisa walked toward the airlock, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. Behind her, she could hear the quiet prayers of the crew. Some were asking for success, others for safety. All of them were hoping that this day would be remembered as the day humanity joined the galaxy as friends, not conquerors. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay the meeting station, and beyond that, a future that could be bright with peace or dark with war. Lisa took a deep breath and stepped forward into history. Jake watched her go, then turned to his crew. All right, people. We wait. We watch. We pray that our doctor can work a miracle. The Peacekeeper settled into position near the station. On Earth, billions of people were gathered around their screens, watching the live feed from the mission. Children were staying home from school. Workers were leaving their jobs. Everyone wanted to see this moment when humanity would finally have a chance to prove they could choose peace over war in the darkness of space. The Zephyrian fleet waited like sleeping predators. Their ships were beautiful, but there was something in their formation that suggested they were ready for more than just talking. Whether they truly wanted peace or were planning something else, only time would tell. The future of humanity hung in the balance, carried by one brave woman with a bag full of gifts and a heart full of hope. Dr. Lisa Martinez stepped through the airlock onto Harmony Point Station. The ancient walls were covered with symbols from the dead race that built this place thousands of years ago. The air felt different here, thinner somehow, as if the station itself was holding its breath. Ryan Baker followed close behind her, his hand resting near his weapon. His 2 soldiers, Sergeant Mike Torres and Corporal Jenny Walsh, spread out to cover the room. They were trying to look relaxed, but their eyes never stopped moving. Old habits from too many battles made them watch every shadow. The meeting room was large and round, with a table in the center made from some kind of black stone. Ancient lights in the walls gave everything a soft blue glow. Lisa thought it was beautiful, Ryan thought. It had too many places for enemies to hide. They waited for 10 minutes before the Zephyrians arrived. When the far door opened, Lisa felt her breath catch in her throat. The aliens were even more impressive in person than in the video messages they had sent to Earth. The leader was tall, maybe 8 feet high, with skin that seemed to shift between silver and pale blue. Its face was long and narrow, with large eyes that reflected the room's light like mirrors. When it moved, it seemed to flow rather than walk, as if it was swimming through the air instead of the water. 2 other Zephyrians flanked their leader. They looked similar, but smaller, and they carried what might have been recording devices or translation equipment. Lisa could not be sure because Zephyrian technology looked like art more than machinery. The leader spoke, and the translation device on the table converted its words into English. I am High Counselor, WarHFY, speaking for the Zephyrian Empire. We welcome you to this historic meeting, Dr. Martinez of Earth. Lisa stepped forward and bowed slightly, the way her cultural advisors had taught her. Thank you, High Counselor. I am honored to meet you. I bring greetings from all of humanity and hopes for a peaceful future between our peoples. WarHFY made a sound that the translator said was similar to laughter. Your species is young but shows promise. We have studied your history with great interest. You fight well for such a primitive race. Something in the way the aliens said primitive made Ryan's hand twitch toward his gun. Lisa felt it too, but she pushed the feeling down. Maybe it was just a translation error. She had to believe these aliens really wanted peace. Lisa opened her diplomatic bag and pulled out a small, crystal data storage device. Hi, Counselor. This contains detailed information about human science, culture, and history. We offer it freely as a sign of our good intentions. We also have proposals for joint research projects, cultural exchange programs, and mutual defense agreements. WarHFY took the crystal with one long finger. For a moment, Lisa thought she saw something like hunger in those mirror eyes. Generous. We too have prepared proposals for our future relationship. The High Counselor gestured, and one of his companions activated a device. A holographic display appeared above the table, showing a map of human space. Red lines appeared around the 12 solar systems that humans had colonized. We accept your offer of alliance, WarHFY said. However, for the safety of the galaxy, certain conditions must be met. First, human expansion must be limited to these 12 systems. You will not colonize any new worlds without Zephyrian permission. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. This was not what they had discussed in the earlier messages. High Counselor, with respect, humanity needs room to grow. Our population is increasing, and we need new worlds to support our people. Second, WarHFY continued as if she had not spoken, your military forces must be reduced by 70%. Such a violent species cannot be trusted with large armies. Ryan stepped closer to Lisa, his instincts screaming that something was very wrong. Jenny and Mike moved to better positions, though they tried to make it look casual. The Zephyrians seemed not to notice, but Ryan had been a soldier too long to believe they were not watching every move. Third, WarHFY said, his voice taking on a tone that sounded almost pleased. All human governments must accept Zephyrian guidance in matters of policy. We have existed in this galaxy for thousands of years. You've been here for barely a century. Clearly, we know better how civilized beings should behave. The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. This was not negotiation. This was not an alliance between equals. This was a demand for surrender dressed up in diplomatic language. Everything the Zephyrians had said about peace and friendship had been lies. High Counselor, Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. These terms are not acceptable. Humanity cannot agree to be placed under the control of another species. We came here hoping to work together as partners, not as subjects. WarHFY's expression changed. The polite mask fell away, revealing something cold and cruel underneath. Then you have misunderstood the situation, Dr. Martinez. This is not a negotiation. This is us informing you of the terms of your survival. We studied your species carefully before inviting you here, another Zephyrian added. You are violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. It's left to grow unchecked. You will become a threat to every civilized race in this galaxy. We cannot allow that, Lisa. Realized with growing horror that this had all been planned from the beginning. The peaceful messages, the diplomatic protocols, the choice of neutral ground. It had all been designed to get humanity's representative here, alone and vulnerable. You're making a mistake, she said, backing toward Ryan and his soldiers. Humanity has many good qualities. We can learn. We can change. Give us a chance to prove that we can be peaceful. WarHFY made that laughing sound again, perhaps. We are not willing to take that risk. Your species will accept our terms, or your species will be eliminated. The choice is yours. Ryan had heard enough. Doctor, we're leaving. Now. But as they turned toward the door they had entered through, they found it sealed. The exit the Zephyrians had used was also locked. Red lights began flashing in the ancient walls, and Lisa heard a sound like machinery waking up after a long sleep.
I'm afraid leaving is not an option, Vexai said.
You see, Dr. Martinez,
This meeting serves another purpose. Your death here.
will send a clear message to your leaders on Earth. Submit to Zephyrian rule, or share your emissary's fate. Ryan drew his weapon, and his soldiers did the same. But before they could fire, the walls themselves came alive with energy. Weapon ports that had been hidden in the ancient stones slid open, revealing Zephyrian energy weapons that had been built into the station. "This is a trap," Jenny shouted, but her words were lost in the sound of charging weapons. Lisa grabbed for her emergency beacon, the small device that would send a warning signal back to the Peacekeeper. Her fingers found the button just as the first energy blast filled the room with deadly light. Mike Torres was hit first. The Zephyrian weapon turned him into atoms before he could scream. Jenny lasted a second longer, long enough to fire one shot that sparked harmlessly off Vexai's personal shield. Then she too was gone. Ryan threw himself in front of Lisa, his body taking an energy blast that would have killed her instantly. As he fell, he looked up at her with eyes that were already going dark. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell them what?" "They really are." Lisa's finger found the emergency beacon's button. She pressed it and shouted into her communicator, "Trap. It's a trap. They're going to kill us all." The energy beam hit her a moment later, but the beacon was already transmitting, sending her final words racing through space toward the Peacekeeper and the humans who trusted her, to bring them peace. On the bridge of the Peacekeeper, Captain Jake Harrison watched his sensors register. The energy discharge from Harmony Point. He knew immediately that something terrible had happened, but he could not believe it. Not until Lisa's final transmission reached his ship. "Captain," his communications officer said with a shaking voice, "we're receiving Dr. Martinez's emergency signal. She says it's a trap." Jake felt his world fall apart. The peace mission was over. The woman they had trusted to speak for humanity was dead, and the aliens who had promised friendship had revealed themselves as murderers. But there was no time to grieve. The Zephorian fleet was moving, turning their beautiful ships toward the lone human vessel. Jake realized that the aliens had never intended to let any humans leave this place alive. "All hands battle stations," he ordered, though he knew it was hopeless. The Peacekeeper was a diplomatic ship with minimal weapons. Against 12 Zephyrian warships, they had no chance at all. The first enemy shot tore through the Peacekeeper's hull like it was made of paper. The second destroyed the engine room. The third and final shot turned the bridge into a ball of fire, taking Jake and his crew with it, in the silence that followed. The Zephyrian fleet regrouped and began the journey toward human space. They expected their message to be clear: humanity would submit or be destroyed. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake in their species. Long history, the humans were about to learn what their emissary had died for, and the Zepharians were about to learn what humans became when someone murdered their peacemakers. The emergency signal from Dr. Lisa Martinez reached Earth 3 hours after her death. The message traveled faster than light, carrying with it the last words of humanity's first ambassador to an alien species. When it arrived at Earth Command, it changed everything. President Helen Carter was in the Oval Office when the call came. She had been waiting by the communication console since the diplomatic mission began, hoping to hear good news about humanity's first peaceful contact with aliens. Instead, she heard Lisa's final scream and the sound of energy weapons destroying human lives. General Alex Morgan was the first to arrive at the White House. He had been Earth's top military commander for 15 years. But he had never seen the president look like this. Helen Carter sat in her chair like a statue made of ice, watching the recorded message play over and over again. "How many times have you watched it?" Alex asked quietly. 7, Helen said without looking away from the screen. "Every time I hope I'll see something different. Every time I hope Lisa will find a way out." Secretary of Defense Carl Johnson arrived next, followed by Admiral Susan Clark from Space Command. They had all seen the recording, but watching it with the president made it feel more real and more terrible. "Talk to me," Helen said. Tell me what happened out there. Admiral Clark stepped forward. Madam President, based on the sensor data. From the Peacekeeper, this was a carefully planned ambush. The Zephyrians built weapons into Harmony Point Station before the meeting. They never intended to negotiate. They wanted our people dead. General Morgan pulled up a holographic display showing the battle. The Peacekeeper never had a chance. It was a diplomatic vessel with minimal defenses. The Zephyrian fleet destroyed. In less than 30 seconds, Ellen watched the tiny lights on the display that represented human lives being extinguished. Captain Jake Harrison and his crew had volunteered for this mission because they believed in peace. Now they were all dead because aliens had lied to them? Why? She asked. Why kill our diplomats? What did they gain from this? Carl Johnson had been studying alien behavior for 20 years. They're sending a message, Madam President. They want us to be afraid? They expect us to surrender rather than face the same fate as Dr. Martinez. They expect us to what? Ellen's voice was dangerously quiet. The Zephyrians have been studying our history, Admiral Clark explained. They know humans have fought each other for thousands of years. They think we're just another violent species that can be intimidated by a show of force. Helen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of Washington, D.C. beyond, that were millions of human beings living their lives. Working their jobs, raising their children. They had no idea that their species had just been marked for extinction by aliens who thought humans could be bullied into submission. They studied our history, she said, still looking out the window. But they didn't understand it. They saw our wars and thought we were weak. They saw our conflicts and thought we were divided. They don't know what happens when someone threatens all of humanity. She turned back to face the military leaders. They killed Lisa Martinez. They murdered Captain Harrison and his crew. They destroyed a ship full of people who went there in good faith, carrying gifts and hoping for friendship. Yes, Madam President. General Morgan said, What are your orders? Helen Carter had spent her entire political career working for peace. She had negotiated treaties, ended conflicts, and built bridges between enemies. She had personally chosen Lisa Martinez for the diplomatic mission because she believed in the power of peaceful solutions. But some things could not be solved with words. Some enemies could not be reasoned with. And some crimes demanded justice, no matter the cost. General Morgan, she said, her voice steady and cold. Activate every reserve unit in the Earth Defense Force. I want every retired soldier back in uniform within 48 hours. Admiral Clark, begin immediate mobilization of all fleet assets. Every ship, every station, every orbital platform. If it can fly and carry weapons, I want it ready for war. Secretary Johnson invoked the Colonial Defense Act. Every human world, every mining station, every research outpost is now under direct military authority. We are at war. The room fell silent. The Colonial Defense Act had never been used before. It gave the Earth government total control over all human territory and resources. It turned every human colony into a military base and every civilian into a potential soldier. Madam President, Admiral Clark said carefully, Are you declaring war on the Zephyrian Empire? Helen looked at each of them in turn. These were good. People who had spent their lives protecting humanity. Now she was asking them to do something that might destroy both species. The Zephyrians have already declared war on us, she said. They did it when they murdered our diplomats under a flag of truce. They did it when they destroyed a ship full of peaceful people. They just expected us to surrender instead of fighting back. She walked back to her desk and sat down. They're about to learn something about humanity that they didn't find in their history books. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And we don't forgive those who murder our people. General Morgan straightened to attention. What level of response are you authorizing, Madam President? Helen Carter looked at the image of Dr. Lisa Martinez on her desk. Lisa had been a brilliant scientist, a caring person, and a woman who truly believed that different species could work together in peace. She had died for that belief, killed by aliens who saw her hope as weakness. Total war, Helen said. Every resource, every person, every ship. The Zephyrians wanted to see what humans do when we're threatened.
Alda!
Within the hour, across Earth and throughout the human colonies, military bases that had been quiet for decades suddenly came alive with activity. Ships that had been mothballed were pulled out of storage and made ready for battle. Factories that made civilian goods were converted to produce weapons and ammunition. Governor Merle Bennett of the Texas colony received his orders while eating dinner with his family. Within an hour, he had authorized the conversion of his entire merchant fleet into military transports. His wife asked him why, and he showed her the recording of Lisa Martinez's final moments. She stopped asking questions and started helping. Director Nancy Kim controlled the largest mining operation in human space. When she got the call from Earth Command, she redirected every mining ship and cargo hauler to support the war effort. Her miners would dig up the metals needed for weapons. Instead of materials for buildings, even the peaceful research colonies joined the effort. Dr. Robert Hayes, who had spent his life studying alien cultures, began working on ways to understand Zephyrian weaknesses. His daughter Jennifer, a civilian engineer, started designing new weapons based on captured alien technology. The transformation was remarkable and terrifying. Humanity had been at peace for 3 generations, but the machinery of war was still there, waiting under the surface. Within days, the entire human civilization had become a weapon pointed at the Zephyrian Empire. News of the declaration spread. Across Earth's networks, billions of people watched President Carter's speech to the nation, where she explained what had happened to their diplomats and what humanity would do about it. "They killed our peacemaker," she said, looking directly into the camera. "They murdered innocent people who went to them in friendship. They thought this would make us afraid. They thought this would make us surrender." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of an entire species' anger. They were wrong. Humanity does not kneel to bullies. Humanity does not surrender to murderers. And humanity does not forget those who kill our people. Children stopped playing in the streets to listen. Workers left their jobs to hear the president's words. Even criminals paused in their activities to understand what was happening to their species. "The Zephyrians have declared war on humanity by their actions," President Carter continued. "Therefore, humanity declares war on them. Total war. Complete war. War until they understand that some things cannot be forgiven." The speech ended, but its effects would last for years. Humanity had been awakened from its peaceful sleep by the murder of its diplomat. The Zephyrians had expected fear and surrender. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. A unified human species with a single goal. They had wanted to see what humans were capable of when threatened. They were about to find out. The first week after President Carter's declaration was like watching a sleeping giant wake up. Across human space, things that had not moved for decades suddenly roared to life. Shipyards that had been building cargo vessels and passenger ships began producing warships. Factories that made furniture and household goods started making bullets and bombs. Commander Tony Rodriguez had been retired for 5 years, living quietly on a farm on New California. He was feeding his chickens when the military transport landed in his backyard. 2 hours later, he was on his way back to Earth with the rank of admiral and orders to build a fleet from nothing. Tony stood in the main shipyard above Earth, looking at what he had to work with. Most of the ships were civilian vessels. Cargo, haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, and research vessels. They were not built for war, but Tony had fought in enough battles to know that sometimes you had to use what you had. "Admiral," said Captain Lucy Parker, his new chief of staff, "we have 230 ships of various sizes. Maybe 50 of them were originally military vessels. The rest are converted civilian craft." Tony nodded, studying the list of ships on his tablet. "What about weapons?" "We're stripping guns from orbital defense platforms and mounting them on the larger ships. Smaller vessels are getting missile launchers and armor plating. It's not pretty, but it should work." Conversion process was happening everywhere. The passenger liner U.S. Golden Dream had its luxury cabins torn out and replaced with weapon systems. The cargo hauler Big Thunder got armor welded to its hull and missile pods attached to its sides. Even the research ship Curious Mind was fitted. with sensors and communication gear to serve as a spy vessel. Dr. Amy Watson has been working on new materials for building construction when the war began. Now she was in charge of the Weapons Development Division, leading a team of scientists who worked 18 hours a day to create better ways to kill Zephyrians. The problem, Amy explained to her team, is that their shields can stop our normal weapons. But shields need power, and power systems create heat. If we can overload their cooling systems, their shields will fail. Our team worked with captured alien technology from previous encounters with other species. They had pieces of energy weapons, shield generators, and engine components that had been taken from defeated enemies over the years. Now they were combining human engineering with alien science to create weapons that could hurt the Zephyrons. The result was a new type of weapon that fired superheated plasma in rapid bursts. It was crude compared to Zephyrian technology, but it was designed to overwhelm their defenses through sheer volume of fire. If one shot could not break their shields, maybe 100 shots fired at the same time could. The colonial worlds responded to Earth's call for help with an enthusiasm that surprised even the military leaders. Governor Paul Bennett of New Texas had promised his merchant fleet, but he gave much more than that. He authorized the construction of weapons factories, training camps, and supply depots across his entire planet. Every person on New Texas who can hold a gun is now part of the militia, Paul announced to his people. Every factory that can make parts is now making weapons. Every farm that can grow food is now feeding soldiers. The aliens killed our diplomat, and we're going to make them pay for it. Director Nancy Kim controlled the asteroid mining operations in the belt. Her ships normally dug up metals and rare elements for peaceful purposes. Now they were mining the materials needed for war: titanium for armor, rare earth elements for electronics, and radioactive materials for the most powerful weapons. We're not just mining for Earth anymore, Nancy told her crews. We're mining for revenge. Every ton of metal we dig up is another bullet to fire at the aliens who murdered Dr. Martinez. The transformation was not just about ships and weapons. It was about people. Humans who had lived peaceful lives for generations were learning to be soldiers again. Training camps that had been closed for decades were reopened and filled with volunteers. Lieutenant Colonel Danny White found himself in charge of training civilians to be Marines. Most of his recruits had never fired a weapon in their lives, but they learned quickly. The murder of the diplomatic mission had created an anger in humanity that made them willing to do whatever was necessary to fight back. Listen up, Danny told a group of new recruits. The aliens think we're just another species they can push around. They think killing our diplomats will make us scared. They're wrong. We're not scared. We're angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Recruits came from every walk of life. There were teachers and doctors, farmers and engineers, students and retirees. What they all had in common was a determination to make the Zephyrians pay for what they had done. Intelligence reports began coming in from spy networks throughout the galaxy. The news was both encouraging and worrying. The Zephyrians were clearly surprised by humanity's response. It expected surrender, or at most limited resistance. Instead, they were seeing signs of a military buildup that they did not understand. High Counselor Vexai, the same alien who had ordered Dr. Martinez's death, sent a message to Earth through neutral channels. The message was simple. Humanity could still accept Zephyrian rule and avoid destruction. All they had to do was surrender their weapons and submit to alien authority. The response came not from President Carter or the diplomatic corps, but from Admiral Susan Clark herself. The message was even simpler. You had your chance to negotiate. Dr. Martinez came to you in peace, and you murdered her. Now you get to find out what humans do to murderers. The Zephyrian leadership met in emergency session to discuss the human response. They had ruled their part of the galaxy for thousands of years, and they had never encountered a species that reacted to threats with such rapid and complete militarization. Perhaps we underestimated them, one counselor suggested. Their industrial capacity seems greater than our intelligence indicated. They are still primitives, Vexai insisted. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their ships are crude conversions of civilian vessels. They cannot possibly threaten our empire. But other Zephyrians were not so sure. reports from there. Border worlds spoke of human ships appearing in systems where no humans had been seen before. Spy satellites were going silent. Trading posts were being evacuated. Something was moving in the darkness between the stars, and it was moving towards Zephyrian space. The first major test of human preparation came when a Zephyrian patrol encountered Admiral Rodriguez's advanced scout group near the edge of human territory. The alien ships expected to find the same kind of lightly armed vessels they had, destroyed at Harmony Point. Instead, they found something entirely different. Captain Joey Palmer commanded the converted freighter U.S. Defiance. His ship had been carrying grain and manufactured goods just 2 weeks earlier. Now it mounted enough weapons to destroy a small city and armor thick enough to stop most alien weapons. Unknown vessels. The Zephyrian patrol leader transmitted, "You are entering restricted space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Joey's response was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear it. Is Captain Palmer of the Earth Defense Force? You aliens murdered our diplomat and declared war on humanity? Now you get to see what that means. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The Zephyrian patrol had superior technology and better trained crews, but they were outnumbered 3-1 by humans who fought with a fury they had never encountered before. When it was over, 2 Zephyrian ships were destroyed and 1 was captured. The human fleet had taken damage but lost no ships. The captured Zephyrian crew was questioned by human intelligence officers. What they learned was disturbing. The Zephyrians truly believed they were superior to humanity in every way. They could not understand why humans refused to accept their rule. They seemed genuinely puzzled that murdering diplomats had made humans angry instead of afraid. "Your species cannot win," the captured Zephyrian commander told his interrogators. "We have better ships, better weapons, better technology. You should surrender now and save yourselves from total destruction." The human officer in charge of the questioning was Colonel Beth Adams, a veteran of the border wars who had seen plenty of alien prisoners before. "You keep talking about your superior technology," she said, "but you're missing something important. We don't need to be better than you. We just need to be angrier than you. And thanks to what you did to Dr. Martinez, we're very angry." News of the victory spread through human space faster than the ships that carried it. On Earth, President Carter announced that humanity had won its first battle against the aliens who murdered their diplomat. On the colonies, people celebrated in the streets. In the shipyards and factories, workers pushed themselves even harder to build more weapons for the war to come. The Zephyrians had thought they were dealing with a primitive species that could be easily intimidated. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping in human civilization for 3 peaceful generations. They had reminded humanity what they were capable of when someone threatened their survival. The war was just beginning, but already the aliens were learning their first lesson about humans. When you kill their peacemakers, they stop trying to make peace. 6 months after the murder of Dr. Lisa Martinez, the real war began. Admiral Tony Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Vengeance, watching the enemy fleet approach through the swirling gas clouds of the Kepler Nebula. This would be the largest space battle in human history, and Tony knew that everything depended on winning it. The Zephyrian fleet was impressive. 60 warships, each one sleek and deadly, their hulls glowing with the same strange light that had fascinated humans during the peace talks. These were not patrol vessels or scouts. This was the main battle fleet of the Zephyrian Empire, destined to crush human resistance once and for all. But Tony was not intimidated. Behind him, spread across 100 kilometers of space, was the largest human fleet ever assembled. 300 ships of every size and type, from massive converted cargo haulers to small fast attack craft. They looked crude compared to the alien vessels, but Tony knew something the Zephyrians did not understand. Sometimes crude was exactly what you needed. "Admiral," reported Captain Lucy Parker from the communications station, "the enemy commander is sending us a message." The main screen showed a Zephyrian that Tony recognized from intelligence reports. Admiral Kekstar, one of their most experienced military leaders. The alien's translation came through clearly. "Human vessels, you are outmatched and surrounded. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist, and we will make examples of you that will terrify your species. For generations. Tony activated his own transmitter, broadcasting his response to both fleets. This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. 6 months ago, you murdered our diplomat who came to you in peace. You killed Dr. Lisa Martinez and everyone. With her because you thought it would make us afraid. You were wrong. It just made us ready to kill you. The Zephyrian response was immediate. Their fleet moved forward in perfect formation, energy weapons charging with deadly light. They had superior technology, better shields, and crews that had been fighting space battles for centuries. By every logical measure, they should have won easily, but humans had stopped fighting logical wars. A long time ago, Tony's first surprise was the converted mining ship U.S. Earthshaker, commanded by Captain Pete Johnson. Pete had spent 20 years blasting asteroids apart with industrial mining charges. He was using those same charges as weapons, firing them into the Zephyrian formation where they exploded like tiny nuclear bombs. The alien shields held, but the explosions created clouds of radioactive debris that interfered with their sensors. Suddenly, the Zephyrians could not see clearly what the humans were doing. This was exactly what Tony had planned. His second surprise was the research vessel U.S. Discovery. Under the command of Dr. Sarah E. Kim, Sarah had loaded her ship with every type of electronic warfare equipment that human science could produce. As the Zephyrians struggled to see through the debris clouds, she began jamming their communications and targeting systems. The alien fleet, which had moved forward in perfect coordination, suddenly found itself blind and unable to talk to each other. Ships that had fought together for decades were now isolated and confused. Tony's third surprise was the most devastating. The converted passenger liner U.S. New Hope, commanded by Captain Roy Chen, had been gutted and filled with the new plasma weapons that Dr. Amy Watson's team had developed. When Roy opened fire, his ship unleashed more destructive energy in 30 seconds than most human worlds produced in a year. The plasma bursts slammed into the leading Zephyrian ships like hammers, their shields designed to stop precise energy. Beams could not handle the crude but overwhelming force of human weapons. One by one, the alien vessels began to explode. Admiral Kekstar tried to regroup his forces, but the humans were already among them. Captain Joey Palmer and his converted freighter used Defiance, rammed his ship directly through the shields of a Zephyrian heavy cruiser. His final transmission was heard across both fleets, for Dr. Martinez and the Peacekeeper. The ramming attack destroyed both ships, but it opened a hole in the alien formation that other human vessels poured through. What had started as an organized battle became a wild melee where human determination mattered more than alien technology. The battle raged for 3 hours. When it finally ended, 40 Zephyrian ships had been destroyed, and 15 more had been captured. The human fleet had lost 30 vessels, but they had won a victory that shook the entire galaxy. The mighty Zephyrian Empire had been defeated by a species they considered primitive. The news of the victory at Kepler spread through human space like wildfire. On Earth, people danced in the streets. On the colonies, workers in weapons factories pushed themselves even harder to supply the advancing human fleets. For the first time since Dr. Martinez's murder, humanity believed they could actually win this war. But Tony Rodriguez was not finished. He had studied Zephyrian tactics and knew that they would retreat to their fortress worlds and try to hold defensive positions. He was not going to give them that chance. The human fleet would follow them home and end this war on alien soil. The assault on Vex Prime, the capital world of the Zephyrian Empire, began 3 weeks later. Admiral Betty Hayes commanded the attack fleet. 200 ships that had been reinforced with the best weapons and armor that human industry could produce. Planet was defended by orbital platforms, defense satellites, and the remaining ships of the Zephyrian Navy. It should have been impossible to take, but Betty had learned the same lessons as Tony Rodriguez. When humans decided to do something, they found a way to do it. The key to the victory was Captain Steve Wilson and his team of former asteroid miners. They had spent months studying the orbital defenses of Vex Prime, looking for weaknesses. What they found was that the Zephyrian platforms were powered by fusion reactors that were shielded but not armored. Steve led a squadron of small ships on a suicide run through the defensive fire. Half of his ships were destroyed, but the survivors managed to plant explosive charges on the reactor shields. When the charges detonated, the fusion reactors went critical and destroyed the entire orbital defense network. With their defenses down, Vex Prime was helpless. Human landing craft descended through the atmosphere like metal rain, carrying Marines who had been training for this moment since the day Dr. Martinez died. The fighting on the ground was fierce but brief. The Zephyrians had never faced an enemy as determined as humans seeking revenge for murdered diplomats. High Counselor HFY, the alien who had ordered Dr. Martinez's death, was found trying to escape in a civilian transport. He was captured by Sergeant Mike Torres's grandson, Private Danny Torres, who had joined the Marines specifically to avenge the diplomatic mission. When HFY was brought before the human tribunal, seemed to understand the magnitude of his mistake. "We thought you were just another violent species," he said through the translator. "We believed we could intimidate you into submission." Admiral Susan Clark, who was presiding over the tribunal, looked at the alien who had started this war. "You've studied our history, but you learned the wrong lesson. Yes, we fight wars among ourselves. But when someone from outside threatens all of humanity, we remember what we really are." "And what is that?" HFY asked. "We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed any other race. The species that reached for the stars even when our own planet was trying to kill us. And we're the species that never, ever forgives those who murder our peacemakers." The trial was swift, and the verdict was unanimous. HFY was executed by firing squad, his body left on the steps of the former Zephyrian Capitol building as a warning to any other species that might consider threatening humanity. The war officially ended 6 months later with the complete surrender of the Zephyrian Empire. Their colonies were placed under human administration. Their fleets were scrapped or converted to human use. Their government was dissolved and replaced with human-appointed administrators. The Zephyrian species was not destroyed. They would spend generations learning to live under human rule. They had wanted to make humanity submit to their authority. Instead, they had taught the galaxy that humans were not a species to be trifled with. Dr. Lisa Martinez was posthumously awarded every honor that Earth could give her. Statues of her were erected on every human world. Schools and ships were named after her. But the greatest monument to her memory was the new reality of human space. No alien species would ever again make the mistake of murdering human diplomats. In the years that followed, other alien civilizations would study the brief but catastrophic Zephyrian War. The lesson was always the same. Humanity preferred peace. But they were very, very good at war. It was better to negotiate with humans than to fight them, and it was much better to honor their diplomats than to kill them. The memorial at Harmony Point, where Dr. Martinez had died, bore a simple inscription that became famous throughout the galaxy. "They killed the Emissary. Earth declared total war. The galaxy learned why humanity had survived."